Hello there everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to make this captured Cabochon beaded Kumihimo bracelet. And this is what mine looks like here, just with the materials that I used on mine. And I have a nice purple Cabochon there in the middle, this oval one. And then obviously using whatever colours of the beads that I want to match. It looks like that. So what you actually have here is two separate braids that I've put together in order to capture the Cabochon in the middle there. And then I've attached them using SuperDuos, both in the braids but also afterwards separately. And it looks like that, so it's going to sit nicely on the wrist with your cabochon there in the middle. And then it looks like this on, also depending what materials that you've used. So you have your cabochon right there in the middle, nice focal piece, obviously being the main part of it. And then still nice design around the sides as well. And then as for the size of the piece here, the braids themselves, so the length of the braided part is about 6 inches and 3/4. And then obviously on top of that you then add the length, whatever clasp is going to add to it as well. That could be anything from 1/2 inch to 1 inch, depending what clasp you choose to use. But that's why I prefer to use something like an extended chain here, so it makes it nice and adjustable for different lengths without being too specific, either too short or too long, depending what size you want it to be. And also I just want to mention regarding the braids here, when you go to make them, what I do recommend is have a pretty nice tight tension on them for this design, because it's going to help keeping the braids more straight, but then also fit together nicely and then around the cabochon. So it's just a recommendation for this design, keeping your tension pretty tight on these ones. So if you want to learn how to make this bracelet here, capture the cabochon with them, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to need. First of all, here I have my round Kumihimo disc, because it is round braids that we're making to capture the cabochon. And as for the cabochon here, I have this oval one. This is just a purple agate one. You can obviously use whatever you want to. And this measures specifically 3 by 4 centimeters. So the braids that I'm using and this design here will fit this cabochon just nicely. But if you want to use a different size or even shape of cabochon, you'd have to adjust the braids and the rest of the design along with it as well. So then to make the braids with, first of all here I have my cord. This is a 0.4mm S-lon, is nice and strong. I'm going to make the braid with this cord along with the beads as well. And this colour here is like a light purple, just to fit nicely with the colour scheme that I've got going on. You can obviously match your cord with whatever beads and cabochon that you're using. And then the beads we need to use to make the braid alongside this cord here are these two. So they're 8/0s, and then we need SuperDuos as well to make the braid with. So the 8/0s here, I'm just using lilac S-lon colour, because I thought they'll go nicely with the colour of my cabochon. And then I've just got white pearl satin SuperDuos. Obviously you can choose whatever you want to, but these are the ones we're going to use to make the braids themselves. And then the other beads that we have here are the ones we're going to use after we've made the braid. So basically, you could say the embellishment, but also to connect the whole piece and then capture the cabochon as well. The first ones here are 11/0s, and this colour is galvanized blush. So these are going to be used basically along the edges, along the sides of the bracelet. And then here we have 15/0 seed beads, and these are just white. These are going to mainly be used to capture the cabochon with, really. Obviously using the SuperDuos in the braid that we already have ready. And then along with those beads here that we're adding after, I'm using an S-lon size D. So basically it's just like a sewing thread or beading thread. Again, white because it'll match nicely. In case you can see any other thread, you won't really be able to see it much because it matches with the colour of my beads, at least these ones here. So this is what we're going to use to kind of make the braid and then add and capture the cabochon as well. And I've then got my 2 beading needles here to work with the thread at the same time. So obviously we then also need to finish it off once we've done all this. So I've got my ribbon ends, and they're going to fit nicely because it's 2 round braids that we're making. They're going to be laid next to each other. And then I've got my findings, so loft or claw clasp, extended chain and some jump rings. So let's get it all together and let's get started. And then I've cut some lengths on my S-lon cord here because we need them to start making the braid. And what I have is 4 lengths of about 1 meter each. And then I put them all together at the ends. And then I want to fold them over in half. So put the ends together again here, like that. And then up here is roughly where the middle is. And I just tie a regular overhand knot to keep the cords together and also know that that's the middle. And then I just put a piece of scrap wire around that to help pull it down through the disc. So these cords are now ready to add onto the disc. So then I took on my cords here and added them onto my disc. So I put the knot with the wire down through the center, and then the braid is going to be coming out of the back here. And then I distributed all my cords around the disc, so I'm not worrying about the numbers. I'm just kind of using the dots here as reference points. So I have 1 length of cord on each side of every dot, all the way around the disc here. And then what we need to do is start a little braid. So I'm going to take my top left one, release that from the disc, bring it down, stay on the left side, and then I'm going to take the bottom right one and bring that up and stay on the right side. And then we need to turn the disc for the next pair, and then take the top left one again, bring it down, and then the bottom right one and bring that up, and then turn your disc to the next pair. So you just want to keep going like this. And what we need is a braid here of about 1 to 2 centimeters before we start adding in any beads, because we need that at the end to help finish off the piece. So now I have my braid here, and you can see it's starting to come out of the back, starting to form there, and then we've now reached the point where we need to start adding on our beads. So this is then how I've added all my beads onto my lengths of cords here, and what I've done is I've taken a picture of this setup, put that picture on my website, so if you want to have a closer look in more detail, and there's going to be a text description as well on how the beads are positioned, then I'm going to put a link to that in the description box below, and you can go there and have a look. So then, as you can see, we have both the seed beads and the SuperDuos on all the lengths of cords all the way around. The only difference is that the SuperDuos are positioned differently on each length of cord. So as you can see with some of them here, the section of the SuperDuos is towards the end of the whole section of beads. On some of them it's more in the middle, and then on some of them here it's in the beginning. So that will then determine obviously where the SuperDuos are going to sit in the braid when we're making it. And this setup that I have here of the beads is to accommodate for the way that I work with my braid. So I usually take my top left one, bring that down, and then I take my bottom right one and bring that up. So that's going to make the braid look the way we want it to by adding the beads like this. So if you start with either the top left one as me or the bottom right one, because they're the same as each other, then you need to add the beads just like this one here. But if you start with the top right one or the bottom left one, which are the same as each other as well, then what you'll need to do is set up the beads a bit differently. So imagine you put a mirror in front of your disc here, and then what we'll need to do is add the beads in that mirror image. So that means the top two here would swap over. So it's not the cords, but it's the positioning of the beads. The bottom two would swap with each other. The side ones here, the top one on each side would be swapping over the middle, and then the bottom one on each side will be swapping over the middle as well. And that will then achieve that mirror image if you work in the opposite way. But then once you have all your beads positioned here on your cords, then we'll need to start adding them into the braid. So what we just want to do is continue with our braid in the exact same way, except now I'm going to grab my top left cord here because that's the next one I'm due to take. Every time we now move a cord across the disc, I need to drop down one bead. So I'm grabbing that cord and then reaching for the very first bead you run into, let it drop into the middle, make sure it goes underneath the cords in the middle there, and then bring it down. So the braid technique and structure is exactly the same. We're now just adding in a bead every time we make a movement with a cord. And then I'm taking the bottom one here, and again I'm releasing one bead and letting that drop down. And always making sure that your beads stay underneath the cords in the middle there. That's the main thing, because we want the beads to end up on the outside of the braid, and that's how that happens. Now I want to turn the disc again to the next pair, and then just keep doing the same thing basically. So release one cord, let the bead drop down. If it doesn't go underneath the cords by themselves, just tuck it in with your finger there. And then continue. So go from one cord, grab the next cord, release your bead. Continue in the structure of the braid, over to the other side. Make sure it stays in there. And then turn your disc again. And you keep doing this until you basically use up all the beads here and all the cords, because then we've achieved the braid structure that we want. So what I just wanted to do as well is I've just gotten a little bit further on with adding my beads in, and I've now reached the point where I'm going to add in my very first SuperDuo. So I'm just grabbing the cord again, releasing the bead as I release the cord, let the bead drop down, and really you don't have to do much differently here, if anything at all, because I'm just putting it underneath and bringing my cord down. And you can see the bead pretty much sits the way we need it to sit naturally. So the hole that we haven't put any cord through, because it's just the cord going through one hole, will be going outward, and that's what we need. But like I said, it will most likely be doing that naturally, but just make sure to keep an eye on it throughout. And then obviously I'm going to grab my next cord, release the bead on that, push it under and bring it across. And that's all there is really. So the SuperDuos aren't really any different at all when you add them into the braid. Just make sure to keep a bit of an eye on them. Now that I used up all my beads here then, on all the cords, we then need to just finish off this end pretty much just the same way that we started out. So make a little section of braid with just the cord. So all we're going to do is continue braiding the same way without adding in the beads. Just bring it across. So we go back to the original braid structure without beads here. Turn your disc. And you want to do this for about another 1 to 2 centimeters, just like we did at the beginning. So now that we're basically done with the braid here on the disc, then I just want to secure the end in the middle so that when we take it off the disc or the cord, it's not going to come undone. So what I'm going to do is, I just used this pair here, so I'm going to go to the next pair that I was due to take, and then I'm going to take cords from that pair that are diagonally opposite each other. So these two here, bring them across the middle and tie a knot. And then tighten that down right at the end of the braid. Then I'm going to take the other two from that pair. Again, across the middle and tie a knot. And tighten that down on the end. Then I'm just going to move to the other pair because I want to go around using all the cords. And really what this is for, again take cords diagonally opposite each other, is just to secure the end in place so we can continue working with it without it coming apart, but also without adding too much bulk. So that's why I'm kind of tying the knots like this. And take the last cords, tie a knot, and then on here, because this is the last one, I just want to tie a double knot because a single knot can come undone pretty easily. And we have some more work to do with this braid. So just like that, take the disc away, and then here we have the finished braid. So this is what it looks like. And this is then how the braid looks. So you can see where your SuperDuos are sitting. Obviously we have the seed beads, kind of the main part around the braid, but then SuperDuos are placed like this. So we have a section at the beginning on one end where they're just in one row, and then on the other end as well, and then right in the middle we have basically 2 rows of SuperDuos going kind of next to each other. And this is the part in the middle that's going to capture the cabochon. And these ones here are going to connect. So we have this braid ready. What I'm going to do is finish off the end in a way. So I'm just going to get rid of the excess cord to make it easier to work with. The same thing, get rid of the excess wire here. And then we need to make another one of these. So we need to end up with 2 of these braids in order to go on to the next step. So here I then have both my braids ready now, and they're exactly the same. So that's what they look like. So now what we need to do is start obviously piecing things together and using other materials as well. So to do this, what we need to do as well is get our needles and thread ready. So what I have here is my 2 needles, 2 separate ones, with a separate piece of thread on each. And I just use about a wingspan for a length here for each needle. And then obviously you want to put a knot at the other end, just to kind of be a stopper to begin with. Then also put a decent length of tail through the needle. So you basically have it doubled up, just so it makes it a bit shorter as we're working with it, and you can release the tail along the way. So I'm just going to start with one, because what we need to do first of all is take one needle and thread there and attach to one of our braids, and then you want to do the same with the other. So I'm just going to show you here. So all I want to do is go to the end where it's just the cord that we used. We need to attach it first of all. So I'm just going to go through it, get all the way here, and then the knot there stops it. And then I basically just want to go back and forth a few times here to help secure it nicely. So I know definitely the thread is going to stay there. Obviously there's a knot, but I just like going through it a few times. It gives you that extra security. So back and forth here. And then once you've done that a few times, you want to start working your way up towards where the beads in the braid start. So now I've got my thread here further up towards the beads, and where I want to end up with it is on the side of the braid here where I have my SuperDuos, and then also right below kind of the bottom bead. So you're going to find we have a section of beads here in the braid in front of the SuperDuo. So we need to make our way through them first to get to the SuperDuo. And also what you're going to see is you have a bead, a seed bead in the braid that's straight across from the SuperDuo, but that has 2 seed beads that are sitting next to each other in between them. So what I want to do is go through the bottom one first of all, seed bead that's in the braid, the one where I'm coming out of the braid with the thread right before it. And then I also want to go through the next one at an angle, and that's then the one that's straight across from the SuperDuo, and then come out from that, just pull the thread all the way through, like that. And now I'm in position, because what we then have is the seed bead that we're coming out of that's in the braid we then have two seed beads that are laying next to each other. That's kind of fill the gap between the one across from the SuperDuo and the SuperDuo itself. So we have this little gap we then also need to fill with beads before we then can start reaching the SuperDuo itself. So this is where I want to get out my first beads that I want to start using, and that's the 11 O's here. So I'm just going to get some of these out. And then we also need some more SuperDuos. So we are going to need to add extra SuperDuos in because we need the two sides, or the two braids rather, to connect with each other. And for that we're going to be using SuperDuos. So that's the braids here, the beads, sorry, here that we need ready. And I'm just going to start with one of my braids, and then we're going to go over and get the other braid and then connect them. So I'm coming out from that seed bead in the braid, and I then want to take two of my 11 O's, because what we just need to do is fill that little gap without any thread showing ideally. And then I'm going to go through the first SuperDuo in the open hole that hasn't been used yet, and just through that, pull it all the way through, and then you can see they're going to sit nicely just there, just filling in that gap. So now we're getting to the proper pattern, you could say, and for that I'm going to take one 11 O, then one SuperDuo, and then another 11 O. So we have two 11 O's with your SuperDuo in the middle, and then for that we're going to go from the first SuperDuo we're coming out of and jump straight over to the next one, again in the open empty hole that hasn't been used yet, the one that's in the braid. Pull your thread all the way through, and it's going to sit perfectly just like that. And of course we're going to do the same thing again. So one 11 O, one SuperDuo, and then one 11 O, and then jump to the next SuperDuo that's in the braid. And just keep going like this on this side here, and basically all the way up to the mid part. So just make sure they sit right, because what we want to do, this is where the SuperDuos and the braid are sitting in one row. We want to keep doing this until you reach the point where we have two rows of SuperDuos sat next to each other. So just right to this point here, and that's where I then want to bring in the other braid as well. So that's the first braid done here. So now I need to bring in the other one as well so we can start combining them. So I have that here, and I've already got that ready to the point where I'm coming out of the first SuperDuo. So just done in the exact same way as I started off down here. And we can just kind of lay it so we find it more comfortable to work with. Just going to lay it down to the side here. And then we need to bring the other braid, and we need to connect these two together. So what we basically need to do is add the beads the same way here, but the SuperDuos that we want to add, they're already the ones that have been added to the other side. So what we're just going to do is kind of go from side to side. I'm coming out from that first SuperDuo in the new braid, then I'm going to add one of my 11 O's, and in the SuperDuo, instead of adding in a new one, I need to go through, basically the new one is going to be the first one we added in the other braid already. So go through that in the open hole, obviously, that hasn't been used yet on that one. So these are all the SuperDuos in the first braid that we were adding in. And then remember, when we come out of the SuperDuo, we need to add the other 11 O's, so we have the total of 3 beads there. And then once we have that on, we need to jump, just like we did before, over to the next SuperDuo in the current braid that we're working on in the open hole. And then just pull your thread all the way through. And obviously the thread on the other side is still loose, so you can just kind of occasionally pull it a bit tight. It doesn't need to be pulled tight just yet, it's just more to get the idea and see what you're doing is right. You can see here, you pull it tight and it's going to connect them just nicely. So that extra SuperDuo that we add in as a new bead, and now we're going through it again, that's what connects the two braids together. So that's what it looks like. And basically you just want to keep going like this. We're now coming out of that SuperDuo there in the braid. You can also just keep them separate as you're doing this and then pull it tight after. You don't have to pull it tight all the time. Add one 11 O. Go through the next SuperDuo in the other side. So the next one that's basically sticking out, you could say, in the open hole. Pull your thread through. Try not to get too tangled up here because obviously there's quite a bit going on, but just take it nice and slow. Add your second 11 O and then go back to the braid you're currently working on through the next SuperDuo in the braid, and then pull that through. And then you have the next one. So you just want to keep doing this basically almost like sipping it up, the braids, the two braids together there in the middle. Again to the same point where then we've used all the single row SuperDuos in the braid. So now I reach that midsection there on both sides with my thread. Then what we need to do is reposition the thread, because we then reach the midsection, like I said, where we then need to capture the cabochon, and that's going to be a little bit different. So I'm just going to show you, I'm going to take one thread at a time. I'll show you on this side. It's coming out of the last SuperDuo there, that's in the single row, on the outer hole. So what I'm going to do is go through the braid. So I'm going to go straight from that open hole and then straight directly through the braid there, which is then going through the cord really. So just make your way through, go down in front of the SuperDuo and then come out on the other side. And pull it all the way through. And that's going to also help tighten these beads that we've added into place. And then obviously you want to just do it on the other side as well. I'm just going to do that straight away, just so it holds a bit tighter. Go just in front of that SuperDuo and through the braid to the opposite side of the braid. And pull it all the way through. Don't get caught on everything here. Just like that, and it pulls it nice and tighter together as well. And then what we need to do is make our way back in towards the SuperDuos here in the midsection. And we're just going to work on one side at a time, because obviously we have the two rows of SuperDuos, you could say, next to each other. And what I'm going to do is then go from the outside where I've ended up with my thread and needle, back through the braid again, in towards the SuperDuos. But avoiding going through any beads, that's not what we're doing, we're just going through the braid. But the thread is going to end up blending in, because it's going to get pulled in underneath the beads basically. So just make my way through. I want to find a path, so I'm basically going to end up, try and come out right here. I want to come out in front of, on the upper side of the first SuperDuo there. So push your needle through, and then as you can see it's coming out kind of behind from where we're looking, you could say, with that first SuperDuo in the midsection. So we're not coming out in front of it here on this side, and the reason for that is because we need to be in the right position. And obviously we need to capture the cabochon with beads all the way around. So I'm coming out there. You want to do the exact same thing on the other side as well. Come out to the same place but on that braid, and then make sure that your thread is pulled nice and tight. So all this down here is going to stay how it is, and we're not going to ideally then end up with any loose thread. I'm probably going to be going through it again as well. I recommend once we've done it, going through all your thread pads again to make it nice and strong. But for now, we want it to stay how it is, so obviously we can keep working with it comfortably. So I'm going to come out in front of there, and then what we need to do is go through that SuperDuo. So from the top side, through the open hole, and then downwards towards the beads that we've already added in. Just like that. And obviously made sure that it's pulled nice and tight. Do the same thing on the other side. Have your thread end up in the same place there. And then once you've done that, it's then time to start adding into the midsection here. So then I'm going to get the beads ready that we're going to use for the midsection here. So I'm going to get some SuperDuos. We're just going to add in a few more. And then also the 15-0s here. I'm just going to pour a few out. And then we need to use these to then, the threads are in the right position now for where we need to start going around this midsection. So now we have the threads here, one on each side coming out from those SuperDuos on the bottom. Then we need to add in some more beads. So I'm just going to bring them in here. We need some more SuperDuos, and then we need our 15-0s as well that we're going to be using around this midsection. So just get them ready. And then we need to start off with adding some of these beads on the bottom here. So I'm going to take one of my needles on my thread. I'm just taking the one from the left side. It doesn't really matter what side you start with. And then we need to add 4 of our seed beads, first of all, like that. Then one of the SuperDuos. Just get that onto the needle there, just through one of the holes. And then we need to add another 4 of the seed beads. So the SuperDuo ends up being in the middle of all of these beads here. Like that. And I'm going to bring this down my thread and then just take the needle and thread out to the other side. So I have them here. And then what we need to do is just going to put this kind of around my finger, tighten it up a little bit. Then I'm going to take the needle from the other side, so in that case that's my right side. We need to go through all these beads again, but in the opposite direction. Make sure you catch all the beads there, especially the little tiny ones. Bring your thread and needle all the way through to the opposite side again. And then we can just pull on the threads from each side and tighten this down. And that's going to then sit between those SuperDuos there. And then what we just need to do is the needle here and the thread going towards the right, I just need to go through that SuperDuo as well on the right, where the other thread was coming from. So through the outer hole, just to then get in position for the next step. And the same thing with the left one. Just take it through that outer hole in the SuperDuo as well. That's in the braid. And pull it all the way through. Just like that. And then that's the very bottom part there, and we have that SuperDuo added. We're going to go back to that later on and connect it because we still have a hole in that we haven't used. But that's the beginning, and then we need to move up the sides of this midsection as well now. And then from here, what we need to do, I'm just going to start on one side and then show you how we're going to add the beads on there, and you just want to do the same thing on the other side. So going from that first SuperDuo here, we then need to add 4 of our seed beads. So get 4 on there, that's 3, and the 4th one here. And then we go from that first SuperDuo we're coming out from, jumping over to the next one, again in the outer hole. Just pull that all the way through. They're going to sit there. And the next one, we need to add 4 again. So add the 4 seed beads, go to the next SuperDuo, take it through. You don't have to worry about pulling it too tight or anything, just pull them so you don't have annoying thread in the way or anything. We have 2 4s there. The next one, there need to be 3 seed beads. So add your 3, go to the next SuperDuo. Because this is now we're getting more to the middle set of the section here, and then we need to add 3 again. Jump to the next SuperDuo. Pull it all the way through. And then again, because now we're moving from the midpoint and back outward again, so we now need 3 once more. Add your 3 seed beads. Go to the next SuperDuo. And now we're back to having 2 gaps left basically, and that's where we then want to add the 4 seed beads just as we did in the first 2 down there at the beginning. So add the 4 in this gap here, and then add 4 in the last one as well. 3 and 4. Get it on there. And then through the last SuperDuo in this section. And now we reach the end on that side. Just going to keep my thread to that side for now because we've got to do the other side as well. So you just want to add the seed beads on this side in the exact same way as I did here until we then reach the point where we need to connect them again. So I've now made it to the end here on both sides and I have my threads coming out of the last SuperDuo of that midsection. So what we need to do now is connect them again. So basically do the exact same thing as we did down here. So you want to add the same beads, and I've already added them here. So what we want is the 4 seed beads, 1 SuperDuo and 4 seed beads, and go through the threads in opposite directions of all the beads there. Pull them tight down, so they're going to sit just like that. You can see as well, pulling them tight. It's going to then start giving it a little bit of more shape and a curve into things. But what we then need to do is just reposition the thread again. So the same as we did down there, you just need to then take your thread, I'm taking the right one first, and go through the SuperDuo as well, and just the SuperDuo. Avoid the seed beads on the other side, which probably will want to catch it naturally. So just make sure to push them out of the way. Take your thread through. And then the same thing on the other side. Just through the SuperDuo there. Just like that. And that's basically the midsection on this side. Obviously we have the SuperDuos on the other side as well, but that comes later on. This is going to be the back of the piece. So it looks like that. And you can see as I'm starting to pull, it does add a little bit of curve because we added different amounts of seed beads. So less there in the middle. It makes it curve naturally, and that's obviously what we want for the shape. So we're in this place now. What we now need to do is basically repeat everything that we've done, but kind of in reverse. So here we are with the SuperDuo. That's where we came through the braid down on this end. We basically need to do the same thing. So you just want to make sure everything is tight, or you want to keep tightening it. Coming out from that SuperDuo, you need to go through your braid to the other side, avoiding your beads. So just kind of find a pair through here in front of the SuperDuo, so like that. And then we need to go through the braid again to come out and get ready for this SuperDuo. So that's now the section at the end where it's a single row of SuperDuos again. The exact same thing that we did down here. So you want to get through to that first SuperDuo so you can get out and go through the outer hole in that SuperDuo, and then get ready to add in all the same beads as we did down here, and obviously the same on the other side. And you just want to do the exact same thing as that, and then get right to the end where I'm then going to show you what we do from there. So then down on this end here, when we've added all these beads on that end, same as we did here, and also right at the end, remember to then go from that last SuperDuo into the beads in the braid, and also just connect that little bridge, you could say, make that bridge, so we don't have loose thread showing. Then once I'm coming out of that last seed bead in the braid, what I'm going to do is, I have enough thread to keep using. What you could do is finish off the thread here if you don't have that much left, and then start a new thread. That's completely up to you, but what I'm going to do is keep using this end because I do have enough left. So first of all, before I keep using it, I want to just kind of fasten it in place. So I'm just going to go through the braid here right before the bead that's coming out of the thread, and just part of the braid here that's got no beads on it, and then I'm going through it. I just want to make sure, then pull it nice and tight so all of this gets tightened up as well and we don't have any loose thread anywhere. Then I'm going to go back again, and I'm going to go back and forth through this braid a few times to help fasten it in place, because that then helps keep the beads up here nice and tight so we can keep working with them without it kind of coming undone. So back and forth here again, and each time I go through I just want to make sure I pull it tight, and then it's going to end up holding more and more. So do that a few times, and then we need to get back through and start working our way back up again. And then from here, when we've gone through the end a few times there, we made sure both sides are done and they're pulled nice and tight, so all this is looking nice and even and no loose thread. Then to get back up, basically what we need to do is just go through our beads again and follow the thread path that's already there. So I'm going to go right at the beginning here where I also started out and where I just finished now, go back up those beads in the braid, and then also through those two that I added between the ones in the braid and the first SuperDuo. So just following the same path as the other times. Pull that through. Like that. And then we just basically want to get in to this section again, and it's just a matter of going through it. So go through the first SuperDuo, just get through that outer hole. So basically just how we added the beads together and the two braids together. Now we're just following the path that we've already done. So you can just go through as many beads as you can at once. Sometimes you might just be able to go through one. I just went through the SuperDuo there. And also try and push the beads out so you can get to them. Go through the next one. That's then the bead that's in between your SuperDuos there. So between the SuperDuo that's in the braid and then the one that you added in after. And then I'm also going through the SuperDuo there because I can get through it. But you can only probably at maximum get through a couple beads at a time if you do manage to do that. And pull it tight as you go. Prefer to do that. And also what this is doing is it's reinforcing this whole section, because for now on the edges there on the sides we've only gone through all these beads in the middle that connects the two braids once, but going through again here is obviously going to make it much stronger and more durable. So we're going to be going through it a few times, so it's going to help with that as well. For now we need to get both of these threads back up to the end of this first section on the side, so we get up to this right before the midsection again, because we then just need to finish off what we've just done with these extra SuperDuos we added in as well, before we can then move on to the next step. So then I made it all the way up to the other end here of this section, so I'm coming out of the last SuperDuos in that single row of SuperDuos, so the first part of it, before we then go back into the midsection. So what I want to do now is just use this opportunity to then connect to that SuperDuo we added when we made the midsection, but we still have a hole that we haven't used. So this one here, and then we have the same thing on the other end up there. And what I'm going to do is take some of my 11/0 back out. So it's just the same ones that I used through the sides of it here. And then I just want to take one on one needle. I'm just starting with my right one. Go through that hole that we want to connect in that SuperDuo and pull all the way through here. And then the same thing, take the needle from the other side and then go through the same SuperDuo, the same hole, just in the opposite direction. And then obviously pull it all the way through again. And that's then how I'm going to connect the extra SuperDuo we added in that's not part of the braid, but still have it fit in and obviously fit with the pattern as well, so we don't have also any holes in the beads that aren't used. So it adds a bit extra security there. So it kind of bridges the gap a little bit, but then secures the midsection with the ends as well. So that's what it looks like now. We have those two seed beads extra added in, one on each side of that SuperDuo, and it connects it. To then move on from there, what I want to do is go through the midsection, because obviously we need to get to the other side to do the same thing on there, but also I'm going to take that chance to then reinforce that midsection, because the extra seed beads we added in, and also that what gave it that curve, we only have one thread running through there. So what I'm going to do is to take the thread, we have one thread on each side coming out from that SuperDuo. We need to get from that outer hole we just went through to the inner hole. So we're going to have a little bit of thread going on the side of that SuperDuo, on both sides. But because I'm using the white thread with the white SuperDuos, you aren't really going to see it unless you really, really look close. That's why matching the thread with your materials really helps as well. I'm going to take the one on the right side, it's coming out towards the right, and then go through the hole, the other end of the SuperDuo. Just got to find it here. And come out the other side. And if you can, if it already catches the seed beads on that side, then by all means just let it go through. Otherwise you can just go through this SuperDuo. I just caught the seed beads there as well. Pull that through. Just gotta get my a little knot here forming. So straighten that out, pull your thread all the way through, and then take the other side, do the same thing. It's coming from the left, going out towards the left side there, go back through the same SuperDuo in the other hole, and then going towards the right. So you might just have to push your seed beads out of the way and go through. And there I just cut the SuperDuo. It looks like it's just wanting to come through the SuperDuo, so I'm just going to go through that. Because you can just take whatever you can at a time and then just obviously keep going through the beads. You won't be able to go through all these beads in one go anyway. So I'm going through that SuperDuo now. You want to make sure to then just pull this tight. So these extra little beads we added in, to connect that, you could say loose SuperDuo, they aren't going to have thread showing either. So it's all going to be connected nice and tight. So now what we need to do is take, you can just do one needle at a time here, go through all the side. So take the seed beads in each little group of seed bead, SuperDuo, the next group of seed beads, SuperDuo, and just do that all the way up to the other side up here, where all we're going to do here is repeat the same thing, just in reverse. So on this, when you get to this SuperDuo there, we start in the hole we come out of, where we already have it connected. Then we need to go on the sides of that and cross through the outer hole with both needles, and then it's from there we then connect on each side. We take another one of our seed beads that we used on the edge and then go through the SuperDuo, that's the first one here that's on this side, with a single row. And then you just want to go through all of these beads again, same thing as we did down here to reinforce it, the same thread path. And then we need to get out to the other edge, go through the beads in the braid, and then go through your braid a little bit, just like I did before, to just fasten it in place nicely. So now I made it all the way down to the other end here, so I got through the midsection and also attached the other SuperDuo in the same way, and got through this side as well. So just following the thread path, and then I've gone all the way to the edge where there's just the braid there with no beads, and gone through it a few times just like I said. So basically now we have, you could say this is the back side done, because this that we did in the middle is going to be the back. So now what we need to do is then move and do the front, but obviously we need to get our threads in position first of all. So what you can do is flip it if you want to, it doesn't really matter for now. We need to get all the way back up again. So again, you could either keep using the same thread if you feel it's long enough, or you could just add a new thread here on the end, just like we started the first one out in the first place. Then make your way all the way back up through the same thread path again, and that's going to reinforce it even more. And then when we need to get up here, then obviously we need to do this side, the front side, and that's going to actually also start capturing the cabochon in place. So now I got out to those SuperDuos here and got in the position that we're in on the other side. We need to start adding in the beads here to capture it. So that's where you just want to start off the same way as before, and I've added the same beads as well. So cross through them with the two threads, 4 seed beads, 1 SuperDuo and 4 seed beads, the exact same thing. It's just going to sit there and kind of bridge that gap between those two. And that's where you then take your needle, go through the SuperDuo to get into position to add all the beads here along the edges on both sides. Let's grab the other one as well. Like that. Pull it through. And then how we want to add the beads along the sides here, obviously again we want to do that in groups, and we want to get it just right with the amount of beads in each group. So how we want to do that is basically take the exact same as we did on the other side. So the first group here, we add 4 seed beads, then we add 4 again, then we have 3, 3 and 3 across the middle here, and the last 2 groups are 4 again on each. And you obviously want to do that on both sides, and right at the end you want to add the same beads that I just added down here, where you cross in between them, between those 2 SuperDuos there in the end. And obviously that's the point where we also need to actually capture the cabochon. We want to fasten it into place, because then we're getting to the point where it's almost done, we just need to go back and forth a few times. So get to that point, and before we tighten it, we want to just add in the cabochon as well. And then after filling in all the sides here, then right in the end, we have these beads, the same ones as the other end, we need to cross through with both. We're going to bridge that gap up there. And obviously what I said is now we just need to make sure we add in the cabochon. That's what I have here. Before we then tighten this, so just put it in there. Make sure it's going to fit there. And it's going to be a little bit fiddly now, because it might want to pop out a little bit before we manage to completely tighten it and hold it tight. So you might have to kind of just keep retightening it. But then this is going to get tighter and tighter, but obviously we need to kind of get our threads and needles in the next right position as well. So I'm just going to leave it here for now, and then again, just like all the other times, we need to go through the SuperDuos with our needles. just the next one here, just a SuperDuo. And the same thing on the other side. So we can get into position for the next step here. Like that. And just make sure that the cabochon lays correctly. And then we can start to try and pull this tighter. And then as I do that, you can see here it's going to capture the cabochon just nicely and securely as well. Because that's obviously what we're doing. We're using the SuperDuos here, then kind of tightening them and pulling them inwards over the cabochon by using the extra seed beads afterwards. That's what it's going to be like here. So now what we need to do is really what we've already done now a few times. I need to take my needle, one on each side here, just take one at a time, and the same thing again. Go from this SuperDuo down in the front of it, straight through the braid, and out to the other side, because what we need to do is then go back down to this end, go back through the braid to come in to the first SuperDuo of this section here. We'll just have the single row, so the other side, same thing we've done a few times, follow the thread path on that side, do the same thing with the needle on the other side as well. Take that through the braid and then back into the middle on this end, and then just work your way all the way down to the other end. And then do the same thing whether you want to add a new thread or you have enough still to use. We need to come back up again the same way, follow the thread path, because we have the one last thing left to do then. After continuously actually doing this as well, by the way, making sure that this stays tight, so you're probably going to have to keep kind of pulling your threads tight before you kind of finish anything off or you get too far along. So you want to make sure that you haven't left this too loose, because then you won't be able to tighten it anymore if you get too far. So do it along the way, continue to make sure that it's nice and tight. But then all that's left to do otherwise is these SuperDuos we added in on this side. We need to just repeat and do the exact same thing that we did on the other side, just connect them as well. So just go down and come back up, making sure that the cabochon is going to stay in there as nice and tight, and then we just need to attach them as well. So now I went all the way down to the other end here, and I went back up again, just like I said, and I've ended up right where I need to now connect this loose SuperDuo, the one we still haven't used the other hole of it. So the extra one we added in, and we're going to do that the exact same way as we did on the other side. So I'm coming out from the last SuperDuo on each side with each thread of this section here with the single row of SuperDuos. And then all I'm going to do from there is just grab one of my 11-ohs and then go through it in that open hole that we haven't used. So the thread from the right side is going through from the right towards the left, and then the one from the left is going to go through the exact same thing, add a bead onto that same hole just in the opposite direction. Just grab that there and then pull them through, and then that's going to capture it nicely just there. And again, it's all going to then blend in, and we've used everything, so there's no more loose beads or anything. And basically now you just got to finish up the rest the same way as I showed you before, the other side. So all I'm going to do here is, in this case then, the one towards the right, we need to go from the bottom hole in that SuperDuo up in the top hole, going back in the opposite direction. The same thing with the one from the left. We need to come in the opposite direction in the upper hole there, so we get in towards the seed beads in here, because then what we're going to do is go through all these again so we can get to the other side. But also that gives you a chance, first of all we reinforce this area, but also it gives you a chance, if this is still a bit loose or if your cabochon still maybe pops out a little bit because you haven't gotten this quite tight enough yet, then it gives you a chance to go through all this and just when you get to the other side tighten it up again and just give it that little bit more capture pat and tightness to it. And then obviously we go through the exact same way out to the edge, and then on the other side here just follow the path all the way down until you reach the end again, finishing off where the braids without the beads are. And then all we got to do here is really finish off the thread itself, because then we've done all the work that we need to do. All that's then left to do with the ends is obviously finish them off. But that's all the work with the beads, Kumihimo, and the threads and needles and capturing the cabochon there. So just do that, making sure the cabochon is placed nicely and it's nice and secure in there. Worst case scenario, if you do feel a bit unsure, if you can't quite get it to capture, you could always add a little bit of glue on the inside of the braid. So just catch the edge of the cabochon. You won't be able to see it. Obviously choose a glue that dries clear if you just want that extra security, but that's completely up to you. So do all that, and then all we're going to do, like I said, is finish off those ends. So I just wanted to show you here when I got to the other end that I'm coming out of the SuperDuos there in the middle with the threads just going through that and not the seed beads afterwards. So this is then the chance where you can just have, if you need to tighten it a little bit more, just pull it tight here, and then that's where after that you go through this down through the sides of the SuperDuos to go through the hole that we haven't used yet. Again in opposite directions with both, and this is where we then bring in the 11 rows to add in and then continue all the way down, just like I did on this side and all the other sides on the back as well. So just do that if you need to tighten that a little bit extra. So now that I then have the main part of my piece done here, so all the braids, Kumihimo braids, capturing it together, and obviously capturing the cabochon in place in the middle there as well. And I've got rid of all the excess thread. So what's left to do now is finish off the ends like I said. So these are round braids. Normally I would use round Kumihimo ends for that, but because we have two braids laid next to each other, I'm going to be using these ribbon ends. And all I'm going to do is add some glue inside, put them on the end where it's just the cord in the braid, and then clamp it down. Then you can use the loops there to attach your findings to whatever clasp you want to use. Now I already have a tutorial where I show you how to do these and finish off ends with them. So I'm going to put a link to that in the description box below there. So if you need to, you can go and have a look at that. But just clamp them down, attach your findings. Obviously let the glue dry a bit then, and then you'll have your finished piece done. So now I've finished off the ends here and also attached my clasp, so my lobster claw clasp and then extended chain. And then it looks like this. So you have your two braids that are then put together on the sides and then just capturing your cabochon there in the middle. And then I'm just going to use the lock here. And obviously you're able to then just wear it. And it's going to sit nicely there and hold this nice shape. And just have your cabochon set right on top of the wrist. And then you have the nice design there along the sides. That also holds the whole piece together. So that's what it looks like. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And obviously you can use whatever materials you want to and it will look completely different. And thank you very much for watching.